William from Triple Threat Podcast. I'm going to be running down my Premier League predictions for this 2018-19 season. And starting off with 20th place, I don't see any other team besides Cardiff City. Neil Wardock has promoted 8 teams in his career as a manager, but he hasn't done much once he's promoted them. He is a good championship level manager, he said that himself, but he's struggling in the Premier League. He has a championship level squad, and when your star transfer is Josh Murphy, you got some problems. 19th, Huddersfield Town. Wagner is a great coach, and I'm not taking anything away from him, but he's brought in left back and right back to strengthen his team. He hasn't brought in an attacking threat, and they lacked goals severely last season. They need goals. Goals what keeps you up, and that's what you need to survive, and I don't see how they can do that with a strike force of Depoitre and Mounier. That's just not enough goals for me. Even though Aaron Moore is a great player, that cannot keep them up alone. Final relegation spot is going to be a bit of a surprising one. It's going to be Watford. I know people aren't going to be happy with this one, but where are their goals coming from? Troy Deeney has scored 28 goals in the last 3 seasons, but he's 30 now. Can you really rely on him? They lost for Carlson, been nothing with that money. Sure, Carlson wasn't that important for them last season, having scored a goal since November, but did they do anything with that money? They haven't really brought in key transfers. It's not marquee signings. Aurelio Gomez is 37 now. They brought in an aging Ben Foster. I don't see this team succeeding in the Premier League. Bournemouth, it's a good team, but everyone around them is strengthened significantly. All the teams that were close to relegation, like Southampton and all the other teams around relegation have strengthened, like Southampton and Crystal Palace, which will leave them closer to the drop spot than normal. They haven't really brought in any signings besides Jefferson Lerma from Villarreal for $25 million, which is a bit of a reach for him. A strong midfield with an okay attack with 3 decent Premier League strikers with Jermaine Defoe, Joshua King, and Callum Wilson. They have the goals, just I don't see enough from this team. Moving on to Brighton and Hove Albion. 16th is how I see them finishing. Pretty similar to their last year's finish. I like their goalkeeper Matthew Ryan. He's quality, and he did a good job last season. Lewis Dunk's a good center back. Pascal Gross was exceptional last season in the Premier League. They bring in a person like Ali Reza from from AZ Alkmaar in the Eredivisie, top goal scorer from the wing with 24 goals. I think this could be our breakout year for Jurgen Locadia, who looked good for PSV for half the season last year before getting signed up. A strike force of Ali Reza and Locadia and Izquierdo should be enough to keep them up. And don't forget, Glenn Murray scored 12 goals last season in the Premier League. So, a good team. Chris Hugh's a good manager. I see this team staying up. 15th is Newcastle. They haven't strengthened at all. They bring in Kennedy again from loan. They signed in King Sung-young from Swansea on a free transfer. They bring in Shar and Salomon London. But is that enough? The only reason I have this team finishing as high as I do is because Rafa Benitez is one of the best managers in the Premier League. He could be managing any of the top 6 clubs. He is that good. Remember his times at Liverpool when he won the Champions League? Yeah, that's the type of manager that Newcastle have, and I don't know how Mike Ashley's held on to him. 14th, you might be saying that this is a bit of harsh, but it's Burnley. They have Europa League. They overachieved last season. This is a spot where they'd be happy to finish this season. Any Burnley fan would take this. Tom Heaton's not going to be back for the beginning of the season. Nick Pope's out for 6 months or more. And they have Joe Hart or Lindegaard as their keeper. I don't see that as a strong enough team. They had one of the worst goal-scoring tallies in the Premier League. Sean Dyche is a great defensive manager and will keep this defense clean throughout the season. They have good players like Ben Mee and Tarkowski. And Ben Gibson is an absolute steal for around $13 million. I just don't see this team finishing any higher. They're not going to do the 7th place at the finish that they had last season. 13th is Fulham. I like this team. This team has made some good business, signing a 60 million rated Sari for 18 million from Nice, who was looked up by Barcelona, Chelsea, and Arsenal and other elite teams, along with PSG and Fulham, a promoted team, signed him for 18 million. That is a bargain. They have Schürrle on a 2-year loan deal, so there's no risk involved in that. Schürrle played well, decently for Chelsea, didn't have the greatest seasons for Dortmund since he got signed. But I see this team doing well. Alexander Mitrovic, they have on a permanent deal, who was playing extremely well for them. Tom Kearney has looked phenomenal in the championship. Sessegnon's a great talent, but he's not going to have the license to go forward now that Matt Targett left back from loan, going back to Southampton. 12th, I have Leicester. I don't think that this team is strong enough. Losing Mahrez is a key loss. We saw how losing one key player can really ruin a team when they lost Conte after that Premier League winning season. Harry Maguire, great defender. Wilfred Ndidi was one of the best defensive mids last season. Gazal is not a like-for-like replacement for Mahrez. He only scored 4 goals in very limited minutes, to be fair, at Monaco. And Jamie Vardy's 31 now, and Iheanacho looked pretty poor last season. But if he can rekindle that form, then I can see them finishing a little bit higher. But I don't think Claude Puel is the manager to take them, and I see him getting sacked during the middle of the season. And they were calling for his head towards the end of last season. 11th is a bit of a surprise as well. I have Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace looked pretty good at the end of the season with Zaha playing to his best and with Roy Hodgson finally getting his stamp on the team. Zaha is confirmed staying at the team for this season. They bring in Max Meyer on a free transfer from Schalke, who is being looked up by top teams like Arsenal, and he signs for Palace. That is a statement of intent for this team. Without Zaha, they lost 10 games, and they didn't win a single game with him. They were 0 for 10 without Zaha. Zaha with Max Meyer, and if Benteke can score any more goals, he scored 3 last season. And if he can do anything better than that, this team finishes top 10. Moving on to our top 10, and just barely cracking, it's going to be Southampton, moving up 7 places from last season's abysmal 17th. They went 8th, 7th, 6th to 8th, and then all the way down to 17th. But with a full season with Mark Hughes as their manager, who did wonders for them at the end of the season, getting them what they need to survive, down 5 points to Swansea with 5 games to go, and makes them survive by 3 points. He gets his mark on the team. He signs attacking players like Mohamed Elyounoussi, Danny Ings, and Stuart Armstrong, who has high praise from Brendan Rodgers, who says his skills will translate to the big leagues, and he's had experience coaching with Liverpool. They have players in midfield like Mario Lemina and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who can hold it down, along with Oriol Romeu, 3 World Cup center backs, and Alex McCarthy, who stood out in those last couple of games of the season after Fraser Forster was benched. Moving on to 9th, I'm going to have Everton, a little bit lower than some people would have. They really strengthened that poor defense, signing Lucas Digne from Barcelona, as long as Yerry Mina, who was going to have that partnership that they already had, along with Andre Gomez on loan. A trio of Barcelona players. Jordan Pickford impressed at the World Cup, and if Michael Keane can do anything like that Burnley season, this defense will be extremely taut. They have 2 of the best defensive mids in the league, in Idrissi Gueye and Morgan Schneiderlin, and they have attacking talent like Sinek Tosin and Gylfi Sigurdsson, along with signing Richarlison, who hasn't scored since November, but that was with Marco Silva as manager, and I see him doing well. Marco Silva has a 31% win ratio in the Premier League, which is terrible for a manager, but he was managing some pretty poor teams. And now I think he has the team that he needs. He's in the quality of team that he deserves, as he's such a quality manager. And they have young talent like Ademola Lookman and Tom Davies on the bench to bring them some little bit of bolster to the team and add some competition. And I think this is going to be a learning year, and they're going to finish 9th. 8th is going to be my final promoted team. It's going to be Wolverhampton Wanderers, with Nuno Espirito Santos leading the helm in his first season as a top flight manager in the Premier League. He brings in some amazing transfers, and that's what I see them doing so well this year. They bring in Adamada Traore, who had 5 goals and 10 assists in the championship last season, and who finally looks like the La Masia graduate that we saw. They bring in experienced Jean Mario for only 5 million, who has done it with Monaco for years and years, and in the Champions League for years and years, and who will bring quality instantly to this team. Diego Jota on a permanent deal. They bring in Rui Patricio, who's been Portugal's top keeper for almost a decade. Raul Jimenez, who's a promising Mexican striker from Benfica. And they have Bolly on a permanent transfer. This team also has the likes of Ruben Neves, who is touted as one of the greatest wonder kids at some points. This team is talented, and I can only see good things for them. They have a decent defense with Bolly and Rui Patricio, and they have a lot of attacking threat with a decent midfield, and I think this is going to be a breakout season for this team. My most shocking pick is going to be Manchester United finishing 7th, missing out on Champions League, falling 5 places from last season. But with the meltdown that Jose Mourinho is known to have in his 3rd season, it's not that unlikely to see this actually happening. They haven't strengthened that well in the defensive area, which they needed. They're trying to get a center back over the line the entire transfer window to partner Eric Bailly, but that hasn't happened. So either Phil Jones, Marcus Rojo, or Chris Smalling will be partnering him for the beginning of the season, as Dalot has been injured. Lindelof was terrible when he played last season, and although they do have a good attack, just as Mourinho is known to do, making Chelsea finish 10th after winning the league in his 3rd season, this isn't the same Mourinho that we saw get that record-breaking point tally, the Mourinho that we saw at Porto, or the Mourinho we saw at Real Madrid. This is an older version of Mourinho who has completely lost it. You might be asking, who is taking that top 6 spot that United is leaving open? It has to be West Ham. They bring in a Premier League winning manager, Manuel Pellegrini, who won it with Manchester City not so long ago. They made great strides in the transfer window. They signed Yarmolenko from Dortmund. They signed 40 million rated Felipe Anderson from Lazio. They bring in Issa Diop, who was a talented young center back from Toulouse. They bring in Lucas Fabianski, who was nothing but outstanding for Swansea in his couple of years there. And they bring in Jack Wilshere on a free. This team had some decent talent from last season with Marko Arnautovic as their breakout player. The strike force of Yarmolenko, Arnautovic, and Felipe Anderson, I can see this team breaking the top 6. And this is going to be a breakout season for this team. This team's going to gel together nicely into a quality team that's going to be pushing for Champions League places in the next 5 years. A team I have falling out of the Champions League spots is going to be Tottenham Hotspur. It was between them and Chelsea, but I just don't see there's any transfers coming in for them as a major stumbling block. He has players that don't want to play anymore because Daniel Levy has been so stingy in the transfer market. Trying to offload Danny Rose for Ryan Sessegnon is not a good move, who they touted at 50 million last summer when he's linked to Manchester United. They have a great defense, but Toby Alderweireld wanted to move to United this season, didn't get it, so he's going to be unhappy with the team. Their defensive mid, Victor Wanyama, is going to be injured for the beginning of the season, and one of their star players, Heung-min Son, is going to be at the Asian Games the first couple of weeks. So I don't see this team sticking together when all of the top 4 teams strengthening so much, which is going to leave them in the dust. New manager Maurizio Sarri is going to lead Chelsea into a Champions League spot, which they just missed out on to Liverpool last season. Sarri is a great manager. He has his playing style has its own name for it, called Sarri Ball. Sarri is one of the greatest managers right now, and I think that signing in Kepa, although he is extremely overpriced, will be a solid addition to the team, as Courtois hasn't been great in the Premier League. He's one of the greatest keepers, though, who's looked outstanding at the World Cup. That's going to be a massive loss. Antonio Rudiger is a quality center back, as long as Andres Christensen and David Luiz and Cesar Azpilicueta. Who's going to start of those three? I don't know. David Luiz looked to be getting his starting spot back after Conte dropped him last season. Jorginho is one of the greatest box-to-box midfielders and who looked great last season playing under Maurizio Sarri. And N'Golo Kante is arguably one of the best midfielders in the world. Impressed thoroughly at the World Cup, playing the final with an illness. He is an outstanding talent, bringing in Kovacic from Real Madrid, who's hungry and has something to prove. And Hazard is one of the best players in the Premier League on his day. And Willian is a talented player who could break through this season with a talented coach like Sarri. Morata did have a bad first year in the Prem after a 60-plus million move from Real Madrid. A lot more is expected from him, but in a free-flowing, moving front three, who Maurizio Sarri allows to make movements, runs off the ball, and that's how he creates chances under his style of play. And I think that he could thrive this season, and this team will gel together really well. And I think that if Hazard really wants to move, he's going to have to impress this season, and that's also going to help him play extremely well and to the best of his abilities, because we've seen him play well for Belgium at the World Cup and the Euros. He hasn't had the motivation to play well at club level, and this could be the year that he finally wants to play if Sarri can convince him that Chelsea is the team for him and to teach him to be loyal to the team that bought him from Lille 7 years ago. Moving on to number 3, it's going to be Liverpool. They're going to be having too many aspirations in the Champions League to be focusing on the domestic cup. And also, they have brought in too many signings to gel together this quickly. They have Xherdan Shaqiri, who's going to provide great depth for that attacking front three. Keita is a great player, and he could do wonders in the Premier League. Fabinho is great for Monaco, but he doesn't have that passing ability that I think Klopp wants out of him. I don't know who's going to take that attacking mid spot in that 4-3-3 that Klopp's going to run. It could be Adam Lallana, but he's not the greatest attacking threat. I don't see who takes that spot. They were linked to Fekir, didn't get him. Maybe Shaqiri can slot in at that spot. Maybe Wijnaldum, but that's not what you want out of a title-winning team. You can't find that attacking mid spot. They have a great defense now that they've brought in Alisson and Van Dijk. Dejan Lovren claims he's a great player. Can't see that. He's an average player in the Premier League that just barely held onto a spot. Robertson had a great season last year. Trent Alexander-Arnold has been looking great for a 19-year-old. And bringing in Alisson, who has reduced Roma's expected goals conceded by 10. That is insane. He allowed 1 goal for every 4 shots on target. This keeper will instantly make an impact in the team and greatly shore up that weak defense from last season. A surprising second-place finish in most people's opinions. I'm going to have Arsenal finishing second. They bring in Lucas Torreira from Sampdoria, who I think is some great business. He's going to provide that cover for the defense for Socrates, Mustafi, and Koscielny, who all like to press up as center back, which could be a pretty bad combination if they get too hot-headed and get too many red or yellow cards and become passive. But bringing in Socrates is a great piece of business by new manager Unai Emery. Stefan Lichtsteiner on a free. They finally can stop playing Petr Cech, who's looked pretty dismal since he left Chelsea, for Bernd Leno, who could be an instant upgrade and really help this team. Now that they have 2 incredibly talented, creative players, Mkhitaryan and Ozil, to provide chances for Lacazette and Aubameyang, who Unai Emery says are going to be both playing in the same team, and Aaron Ramsey, who you can't forget, had that outstanding Euros and is a great player if he can stay healthy. They got rid of dead weight. They have Aubameyang, as I mentioned before, who scored 10 goals and 4 assists in 12 games, over a goal and assist every game. That is some outstanding numbers. Imagine if he can have a full Premier League season. This guy could be scoring 30 goals by the end of the year. And on to my Premier League champions. It has to be Manchester City. They brought in one player in Riyad Mahrez from Leicester, who is a quality player. But the scariest thing, their backup strike force. Let me repeat. Backup strike force is Jesus, Bernardo Silva, and Riyad Mahrez. That is backup. That would be the front three for a top 4 team. But that is their backup. They have 4 incredible center backs in Vincent Kompany, John Stones, Otamendi, and Aymeric Laporte. They have good fullbacks in Benjamin Mendy and Kyle Walker. Mendy was out for most of the season, and Fabian Delph was playing. Mendy will be an instant upgrade on that. Ederson was a great keeper last season. Their midfield of Silva and De Bruyne is arguably one of the best creative tandems in the league. Their midfield is incredible, with the best midfielder, in my opinion, in the world, in Kevin De Bruyne, along with David Silva, who is a great creator, and Fernandinho, who can provide a little bit of pressure, relieve some of the pressure for that back four that Pep likes to run. Pep Guardiola is arguably the best coach in the league. This team's going to win their back-to-back Premier League title. Pep's going to give them their 4th Premier League title in this century. And I think that this team is unstoppable. They are younger. They're getting better. They're getting more time to gel together. And Pep Guardiola is the best coach in this league. Make sure to watch the whole episode 4 of the Triple Threat podcast on your screen right now. Make sure to subscribe and let me know your questions in the comments below. Signing off from Atlanta, Georgia, William Ezell.